Our book today is Catch-22. Have you ever heard of Catch-22? It means a dilemma or difficult circumstance from which there is no escape because of mutually conflicting or dependent conditions. The term gained traction when in 1961 a satirical novel was published by Joseph Heller. Want to hear the whole story? So, it's the era of World War II. The protagonist, Captain John Yossarian, is a U.S. Army Air Force B-25 bombardier. He is stationed on the island of Pianosa, a small island of Italy in the Mediterranean. His superior, Colonel Cathcart, serves as a high-ranking officer in Yossarian's squadron. He is ambitious, insecure, and obsessed with advancing his military career, constantly seeking to impress his superiors. He continually raises the number of missions that soldiers are required to fly before being sent home to make sure that no one is ever sent home. Cathcart is desperate for recognition and is obsessed with getting his picture in the Saturday Evening Post, believing that this will help him gain favor and recognition from higher-ups in the military. Cathcart wants glory. He is deeply afraid of criticism and failure. He's terrified that his superiors might think he's incompetent. And this fear leads him to make irrational decisions, and he becomes obsessed with trivial concerns like Yossarian's rebellion against flying more missions. He is less concerned with the well-being of his men and more focused on his own career, even if it means sending soldiers to their deaths. He looks at soldiers as tools for his own ambition. This makes Yossarian realizes that he and other soldiers are inhuman resources in the eyes of their blindly ambitious superior officers. He becomes unswayed by national ideals or abstract principles and becomes furious that his life is in constant danger through no fault of his own. Now Yossarian is determined to survive the war. The squadron is thrown thoughtlessly into brutal combat situations and bombing runs in which it is more important for the squadron members to capture good aerial photographs of explosions than to destroy their targets. As a result, he spends a great deal of his time in the hospital, faking various illnesses in order to avoid the war. There he met Doc Danica. He is the squadron's cynical and self-centered flight surgeon. He is responsible for the health and well-being of the men, but he displays little empathy or care for their concerns. Instead, Doc Danica is primarily focused on his own grievances and complaints about his situation, even though he faces far fewer dangers than the soldiers he is supposed to help. He is more concerned with keeping his own position safe than with the welfare of the men. Doc Danica is the one who explains the concept of Catch-22 to Yossarian. Yossarian asks to be grounded because he fears for his life and doesn't want to fly any more dangerous combat missions. Doc Danica tells him that according to the rule Catch-22, Yossarian would need to be declared insane to stop flying. However, asking to be grounded proves he's sane, because only a rational person would want to avoid dangerous missions. Therefore, there's no way for Yossarian to escape the missions. This becomes a paradox for him. Later, in a bizarre and darkly comedic turn of events, Doc Danica is mistakenly declared dead after his name is listed on the flight logs of a plane that crashes. Even though he wasn't on the plane, the military bureaucracy refuses to correct the mistake, and Doc Danica is officially considered dead. This leads to strange situations where his wife receives death benefits, and the squadron continues to treat him as if he doesn't exist, despite him being very much alive. He is discharged from hospital on pretext that he is sane to fly more missions. But he is continually troubled by his memory of Snowden, a soldier who died in his arms on a mission where Yossarian lost all desire to participate in the war. Later, his squadron get bombed by its own mess officer. Milo Minderbinder. He is the mess officer for Yossarian's squadron, but he expands his role far beyond that, becoming the head of an international black market syndicate that operates under the banner of the fictional corporation, M&M Enterprises, named after his initials. Milo is a capitalist, focused on profit at any cost, often justifying his actions with the slogan, "What's good for M&M Enterprises is good for the country." His ambition leads him to make morally dubious decisions that blur the line between business and war, loyalty and betrayal. He is selling to both sides. He trades with both Allied and Axis powers during the war, selling food, supplies, and even military equipment. His only loyalty is to his business, not to any nation or moral code. Milo actually contracts with the Germans to bomb his own squadron at Pianosa in exchange for money. He justifies this by saying it's a business deal and that in the long run everyone will benefit from the profits. Yossarian's friend Nately died in this bombing, and Nately's girlfriend stabbed Yossarian in rage. Nately was a young and idealistic soldier. His girlfriend mistakenly believes that if Yossarian had done something differently or had somehow prevented Nately from going on dangerous missions, Nately would still be alive. As a result, in her grief and rage, she repeatedly attempts to kill Yossarian. After being stabbed by Nately's girlfriend and recovering in the hospital, Yossarian is offered a deal by Colonel Cathcart. He proposed to send him home if he agrees to praise him in public and supports his actions. Yossarian initially considers taking the deal to escape the war, but he realizes it would mean betraying his fellow soldiers who are still trapped in the cycle. Later, he learns the news of Orr. Orr was Yossarian's friend, who was thought to have died after his plane crash, but he actually survived. Orr had been practicing crash landings in preparation for escaping to neutral Sweden. This revelation became a turning point for Yossarian, as it offers him a glimmer of hope. So, rather than take the colonel's corrupt deal or continue flying missions, Yossarian decides to follow Orr's example and flee to Sweden. Yossarian survives at the end of Catch-22. While the novel doesn't show Yossarian physically escaping, it strongly implies that he intends to survive by choosing life and freedom over the madness of the war. His final decision to desert is a hopeful act of rebellion against the bureaucratic system that has trapped him, and it signifies his determination to preserve his own life and sanity. Therefore, the ending leaves the reader with a sense that Yossarian has a chance at freedom and survival.